Hello, everyone. We are going to start the broadcast here, or the presentation here, in about 2 minutes. We still have several people joining, but we do thank you for joining today and look forward to presenting here soon. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started today. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, CMO Trends, Top Channel Priorities. I'm Sarah Cucchiara, Senior Vice President of Channel Marketing Strategy at BrandMuscle, and I am very happy to have with me today Shar Vanboskirk, Vice President and Principal Analyst with Forrester. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to be covering the current state of advertising, COVID-19's impact on marketing, how we can really reinvent the marketing process. We're going to offer you up some recommendations, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. Shar, would you like to start us off today?
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Hello, everyone. Thank you to BrandMuscle for inviting me to join this conversation today. I thought we could start maybe with just a little bit of humor, which I feel like reflects certainly my afternoon and maybe many of yours, that we're all getting a little bit antsy to get outside. And I love that we can connect this way, but I do wish we could maybe see each other face to face. It feels like the question is no longer, when will this be over, but rather, what will normal be like when it is? And I think I've got a fun slide next that just sort of says, however things wrap up, whenever they wrap up, it is certain that we will have very different priorities going into the years ahead. And I want to just give you a few examples of some companies that are changing their priorities or struggling with how to change their priorities to kick us off. My first story actually comes from Reese Witherspoon's fashion brand, Draper James. And Draper James, like many companies in the first part of spring, wanted to do something to honor the pandemic heroes. So Draper James, which is primarily a high fashion, high ticket item retailer, wanted to recognize teachers who were certainly going above and beyond to help families and students. So Draper James decided that it would offer a free dress to every teacher. Well, this was a really popular offer. Within one day, had nearly 500,000 notices on Instagram, got picked up by the Today Show and Good Morning America. It was so popular that Draper James ended up having 1 million teachers apply for a free dress. The problem was that Draper James had only 250 dresses to give away. So in managing for this situation, Draper James tried to backpedal and create a discount for every teacher who wasn't able to get a free dress. The problem was that Draper James didn't understand that, in fact, teachers are not its target audience. And even with a discount, most teachers couldn't afford to buy anything that was for sale on the Draper James website. Now, this is a marketing challenge, this was an operations challenge, this was a merchandising challenge, but Draper James now also faces a class action lawsuit. In fact, many of the folks who registered for the promotion are claiming that it violated California consumer law by asking for private information without ever having anything to give in exchange. So, my second story actually comes from a different challenge associated with the current climate. This is an example from Norwegian Cruise Lines, where it was actually continuing to run media in the spring associated with stories that were actually about how cruise ships were carrying the coronavirus from location to location. So it was wasting money trying to promote taking a cruise on content that was about the challenges that cruise lines were facing from the coronavirus. So, what I think we want to talk to you about today is the way to think about how to make good decisions in the face of the climate that we're in. There's no doubt that COVID-19 will stun marketing. I want to share with you just some of the things that we're forecasting in terms of budget changes and in terms of some of the things that we're recommending to help marketers not get bogged down by this situation, but actually to find opportunity in this situation. So let me share with you some of Forrester's numbers. Forrester actually has forecast the likely change in marketing spend in two potential scenarios. A scenario where the economy begins to recover at the end of this year, so think around the holiday period, and then marketing recovers shortly after that. And then a longer term recovery period where the economy begins to recover midway through next year, and then marketing follows suit. I feel like we could all acknowledge that the most likely of these scenarios is looking like the longer term recovery. It's looking like it's going to be well into next year by the time consumer confidence restores, business practices shift enough to accommodate new buying patterns. So let me just explain the numbers that you're looking at on your screen. Forrester forecast spend in four different areas. First of all, we looked at marketing technology. So this is spent on tools that actually manage your marketing processes or might automate the delivery and deployment of communications. Then we looked at marketing services. This is agency and creative services. It might also be operational services if you outsource your database or management of marketing programs to a partner. And it also looked at strategy services, help with business model or market definition work. We also forecast media, both on and offline media, and we forecast spend on internal headcount. And I want to just give you some of the headlines because then the rest of the discussion will be thinking about how to manage in a climate where these trends are changing the nature of how CMOs are budgeting. So you can probably tell as you look at the declining line on your screen that in our best case scenario, so where recovery might be possible by the end of 2020, even in our best case scenario, we expect that spend on those four areas, MarTech, marketing services, media, and headcount, will fall about 30% by the end of 2020 compared to where we ended 2019. And there are a couple of places where we're seeing things happen in the hardest decline. First is offline media. And this you perhaps are experiencing yourselves, either as a consumer or as a marketing decision maker. Media is taking a bit of a decline, but most significantly offline media because of its lack of flexibility. So we're in a situation where so many folks are no longer commuting to work, people aren't traveling, there's not folks as on subways, and so offline media's audience is much less available. Likewise, the need to adjust messages quickly is something that marketers are facing today. And offline media is challenged in both of those cases. Very difficult to move hard media from one place to the next as the physical audience changes places. And also very difficult to change the story that you're telling in your communications in a dynamic way in the offline world. The other place that we're seeing a pretty significant decline is in agencies. And this is very closely tied to media. So, as media money goes, so does a lot of agency money because many agencies make money off of commissions on media. Now, the places where there are some good opportunities and some things for us to think a little bit more about together today have a lot to do with marketing technology. So, we're finding that technology is actually growing slightly as companies use technology to send essential communications, information about inventory that's in stock, or new opening hours, or maybe even new health protocols so that people can understand what's available and how they might continue to do business. We're also finding that automation plays a heavy role in measurement. And measurement is always critical, but this year plays a vital role in helping marketing decision makers understand how the investment they are making is landing on different households in different markets. And then finally, automation is playing a big role in helping to offload work that maybe was done by an agency, or perhaps to help streamline some of the human resources that are working on things internally so that you can automate the more mundane tasks and allow people to think more strategically and perhaps come up with innovations that will help leapfrog from where they were into the place where they need to be based on the market climate today. So we're going to be coming back to these numbers and some of these trends throughout the discussion, but I think Sarah has some thoughts about how Brand Muscle is seeing these sorts of trends play out at the local level as well.
Thanks, Shar. Yeah, we know that CMOs are seriously challenged right now. Just trying to pivot globally while maintaining that brand integrity and relevancy in this quickly evolving environment that we're talking about. And to add to those challenges, they have channel partners, or really those locally owned distribution points that are all working under very different conditions. When we had shelter in place come in and essential business determinations, this all meant that each of those local businesses were really just scrambling to figure out, what to do or how to survive. And it was even more difficult because these businesses, within a few miles of each other could be working under completely different sets of rules. So we've been working really hard with our corporate partners to ensure that we're creating and executing on programs that really allow for that hyper-local flexibility during this time. And our clients across the board had to pivot quickly, like, Shar said, to really to support these local distribution points and help them, just continue to do business. And so while each of our clients pivoted in different ways, the trends that we saw in general were that, fund management programs changed to be able to accommodate operational challenges and sometimes, even lack of advertising funds at that local level. And our brand management platform was really leveraged to push out assets and products to support, new marketing messaging, because we had to pivot that messaging and even put products out that really promote safety. And then finally, our marketing execution teams quickly worked with our local partners to really adjust those media buys, shift into more relevant tactics like digital, and really switch out that advertising messaging quickly to make sure that we were aligned with the national messaging, but still locally relevant. So, businesses have had to really look hard at how they were managing marketing and then what the future may look like going forward. So, Shar, why don't you share with us how CMOs can really reshape how they plan, in this new world?
So I'm going to suggest that perhaps counterintuitively, now is the perfect time to reinvent your marketing purpose and process. And if you're hearing that and it's giving you a stomach ache, let me present it this way. It is actually more risky for you to do nothing different in a climate where everything has changed than for you to also change and also overhaul the work that you have in front of you. But I don't want you to feel like you're aiming in the dark here. So we want to just offer a structure, some steps that I hope will give you a way to think about what to reinvent, how to reinvent, and what you should be aiming toward in terms of being able to come up with a structure and a foundation for what marketing can do to help your business pivot. So my first recommendation for you is that marketing should drive customer obsession at your firm. And I want to spend just a moment talking about what in the world customer obsession is and why now is the time to be thinking about making this transformation. So Forrester defines customer obsession as putting the customer at the center of your leadership, your strategy, and your operations. And we find that right now, companies that have the customer at the center of their decision making are actually thriving and have a chance to recover faster coming out of the recession. I feel like we could all point to some good ad hoc examples of businesses that have made wise changes quickly. Customer obsession gives you the foundation around which to gauge all of those possible otherwise ad hoc transformations. If you think about who your customer is, what they are motivated by, and how you can actually provide value, then you can determine, should we make this pivot or should we make this pivot based on what will serve the customer best. Now, Forrester finds that customer-obsessed companies tend to have 4 characteristics, and you can kind of see them here presented in a bit of a from and to construct. I'm going to speak to each of these characteristics so that you could think about maybe where you are today and how you might graduate into a more customer-obsessed set of attributes. So, the first characteristic of a customer obsessed company is that they are customer led. They are not just customer aware. And I bet since there are a lot of marketers on this call, you're thinking, boy, that just sounds like a semantic thing. So, let me point out the nuance. There is a difference between understanding who your customer is, what their needs, wants, and motivations are, and using that to determine whom you hire, where you have physical footprint, the kind of products that you stock, what partnerships you put in place, the metrics that you use to gauge effectiveness of your employees. That if all of that is being determined by what your customers need, then you are customer led. The second characteristic of a customer obsessed company is that they are insights driven. They are not just data rich. Now, this one I feel like lands on everyone a little bit easier because I don't know anyone who feels like they don't have enough data. This isn't a question about data volume. This is a question about getting the right data to be able to understand what your customers need in order to help your business be customer led. So I'll tell you a quick story here. I've done a bit of work for Bank of Montreal over the years. They are aggressively pivoting to become more customer obsessed. And they found that in one of the exercises we were doing, one of their greatest challenges in their branches was not that they didn't have enough customer information. It was actually that their Wi-Fi wasn't fast enough for folks who worked in the branches to be able to pull up a customer's profile when that customer walked in the door. So something as simple as that was keeping them from being insights driven. The third characteristic of a customer obsessed company is that they are fast. They are not perfect. Now, this one makes me feel like probably everyone is a bit resistant to being the person at the organization who rolled something out before it was fully baked. So what I will say here is that this is not an excuse to be irresponsible. We could point back to that Draper James example and say, boy, they just moved without thinking. What this is a call to be iterative so that you are thinking about what is a way that we can meet our customers' needs today. And then as we learn more about what works and what they want, we add additional value. We iterate on our effort so that we are staying in front of what they need for us to be customer led. Then the last characteristic of a customer obsessed company is that they are connected, they are not siloed. And this is a great point to make on this call because this is certainly an organizational challenge. It's about breaking down any internal barriers that might interfere with functions within your enterprise that are all working in service of the customer. But this is also about managing any of your local or franchise or branches so that in some way you are working in a connected set of goals to deliver an experience that brings value to your customers. This is also a communication and a process challenge so that it's just easier to speak to each other and share the work that you're doing to help everybody move in a way that is faster and more customer led. So, what's the big deal about customer obsession? Why is this something that I am leading with as the primary foundation for all of us? Well, we find that companies that are customer obsessed tend to have happier customers, happier employees, and greater revenue growth. Just a couple of little nuggets for you here. Customers that believe that a business quickly solved their problems were actually 7 times more likely to stay with the business. And of course, retention is critical right now when it's just very difficult to find and attract new customers. Customers who believe businesses quickly solve their problems were 8 times more likely to spend more with the business, and they were 8 times more likely to recommend the business to others. So let me give you some characteristics or some habits that a marketing organization that is driving customer obsession should have. I just want to introduce 3 responsibilities or 3 functions that a marketing entity should own as you think about driving customer obsession. So, first of all, a marketing function should be responsible for customer understanding. Now, I don't just mean here traditional market research. I mean that marketing should be the ambassador for the customer's needs across the enterprise. It is your job to understand who your customers are, but more importantly, how do they constitute value? What do they need? What are they motivated by? And to make sure that that information is shared around the enterprise so that everything you do, not just your communications, but everything in terms of the products you create, the way you deliver those products is in line with what customers need. Now, the second responsibility for a customer obsessed marketing function is brand strategy. Now, hopefully, this is something that you already are expecting marketing to need to own. What I will say here is to think about this as being marketing determining what the promise is of your organization to your customers and how do you live that promise. So, brand strategy today is no longer just about fonts and consistency of imagery. Brand strategy is about who do we believe we are and how do we live that promise honestly. Then the third responsibility for a customer obsessed marketing function is brand experience. And I deliberately didn't call this customer experience. I believe brand experience is marrying what the customer needs with what your brand promise is. This is about demonstrating your brand promise in any interaction you have with the customer. So that could be traditional marketing experiences, things like media exposures, but it could also be the product or the delivery of the product as a way to reinforce who you are, what you stand for, and the value that you bring to your customers. I'm going to turn it back to Sarah now, who's got some thoughts about how to deliver this.
Yeah, thank you, Shar. As you make this shift to drive this customer obsession and the focus on the customer, it's really imperative that the momentum go beyond your corporate marketing team and even your corporate walls and flow all the way down to those channel partners that are delivering at that local level. There's this inherent friction between corporate objectives and those local business partners' goals. So we just have to find ways to really reduce the friction and make it easier for those partners to execute on and really make it easy for them to execute on your corporate objectives. And different ways to do this is really to leverage technology, like Shar said, and really use the programs you have in place, like incent those behaviors through your fund management program. Provide education and materials and products that really enable this change for them to use locally. And then create assets and marketing opportunities that really align with this new positioning and also drives revenue locally. Shar, you want to talk about the next priority?
So I hope that you can think about customer obsession as the overarching principle to guide the reinvention that we're suggesting is timely for you today. The rest of these recommendations are some more tactical things, some actions that you can take to help you move toward being customer obsessed, and also just to fix some efforts that will help prevent Draper James-like mistakes. So this one is about prioritizing customer experience improvements. This hopefully is about finding places where there is some of that friction and making some immediate improvements. And why do this? Well, by looking at places in the customer experience where things are breaking down, you're going to learn some higher level questions about what your customers need, which may help inform some other decisions about product strategy, delivery strategy, channel strategy, by understanding what seems to be breaking in what your customers are doing with you today. Additionally, fixing customer experience will also help you cut costs. This is about fixing things before they become a more expensive issue. It's actually less expensive for you to fix something than it is for someone to have to call in and have you manage through one of their concerns. And then I mentioned how important retention is just a moment ago. By fixing things that are breakdowns in the process, you're going to help keep your customers from canceling. And of course, we want to keep as many customers as we can all the time, but especially right now.
So changing and improving the customer experience, in your corporate owned destinations, both online and offline, is not an easy thing to do. I've done it a couple of times at some brands, and it can be a huge undertaking, but it's definitely doable. Ensuring that consistent experience across your entire customer journey, even through those local distribution points, can prove to be more of a challenge. Your local business partners may be selling competing brands. They may have space allocation issues and just, a lack of general product knowledge. But we have to remember at the end of the day, their goal is to drive revenue. So by providing programs that really focus on driving loyalty with easy to use tools that result in higher sales for them, will improve adoption and help you promote brand loyalty across your entire distribution system. And channel data really should inform your customer experience. You can monitor foot traffic, online visits, conversion rates, overall sales data to see if things are working, but correlating that with how funds are being spent, what assets are getting used, and just tracking participation in marketing and advertising programs can really help drive more informed program decisions. And then you can eliminate waste on unused assets or vendor programs that really allow for that reinvestment and initiatives that really are driving value for your customers and align with your corporate objectives.
So you heard me mention a moment ago around this notion of finding out what your customers need and balancing that with what your brand promises. I want to suggest that many businesses haven't thought through if that balance provides value to their customer. I think that businesses are very good at understanding the value they get from their customer, but they have spent less time thinking about if they are delivering value to their customer. So I just want to plant an idea that value is created when a customer perceives that she gets more than she gives up. I perceive that I get more than I give up. And Forrester has found that there tend to be more than just monetary or economic value that are potential ways you can bring value to your customers. So I think we're all familiar with economic value, where you're enabling me cost savings. I want to talk a little bit about functional value, experiential value, and symbolic value as potential additional ways that you can create value and perhaps preserve some of the critical margin that you are managing today. So, functional value is about product excellence. And sometimes your customer is going to be quite willing to pay a premium for something that is of exceptional quality. This is what Apple banks on with the quality of their mobile products. I often joke that if I'm having to have a surgery, I'm not looking for the lowest cost option. I'm quite willing to pay for something that I presume will be functionally great. Now, what about experiential value? This is where something is delightful to a customer's senses. And you may find that you can't afford to be functionally excellent, or that's not something that is in line with your brand. You might also find that you can't be the most economic value solution out there. Experiential value is also something that customers are quite willing to pay for, or can be something that they perceive as worth getting for what they give up. Now, this last point around symbolic value is maybe the hardest to explain. Symbolic value is the feeling that I've done something or I've purchased something and it brings meaning into my life. Maybe it makes me feel like I'm part of a community. Maybe it brings nostalgia and it aligns with the way that my family cares about things or what I would have done. Maybe it's something that makes me proud, or inverse, keeps me from feeling shame. And that value is also something that I respect and that I potentially will pay a premium for. So I'm going to tell you a quick story here as you think about maybe some of these different places of value are places where you can align your brand promise, your products, and your customers. So the story I'm going to tell is actually about Penske trucks. So Penske found that for the most part, every rental truck company out there was providing very comparable functional value and for the price. So it wasn't a matter of undercutting the competition or trying to improve the quality of the truck. But what Penske could do better than every one of its competitors was improve the rental experience. So that's what it did. It started developing experiential value so that the experience in the rental center, the experience with a phone agent, the experience with the drop off of the truck were all superior to create additional value on top of what its competitors could do.
It's a great story. The experience is one place that we can really focus on, and marketing and advertising and that whole experience is, and we get that out to our consumers through marketing and advertising. That messaging around being focused on the consumer and our new value focus. And the messaging really, again, needs to be consistent. That experience needs to be consistent across the entire customer journey, including those touch points with our local business partners. So communicating this shift in messaging is super important so that those local business partners understand the value it's going to bring to them, not just the consumer, but also to them as a business owner. And you can really help accelerate the adoption of this whole new concept for them by really backing up what you're saying with incentives through funding. Back it up by providing assets that really support this new value messaging that you're trying to get out there. Whether it's in-store experience with, point of purchase materials or signage that helps support that messaging in store. Make sure it's easy to think about that when you're putting this together. How can they execute easily within their own locations and give them really easy access to get those materials and make it easy to use? And then finally, really ensure that alignment between local and national marketing by providing campaigns and programs that really create that consistency through the entire consumer journey. And leverage technology to do this. It's really important, to reduce friction by creating that integrated platform that really reduces friction and any barriers to participation in helping to get this message out.
So I think Sarah and I get that not everyone is in the same situation right now in terms of the way your business is running, the kinds of budgets that you're working with, and even the opportunities that you face. So as you think about technology and how technology can be leveraged to create value, to create consistency across all of the different ways that your customers are interacting with you, think about how you might audit the technology that you have in place for efficiency, to look for places where maybe there's opportunity to eliminate some redundancy. Maybe there's opportunity to better utilize technology that you already have in place. So I have a few guidelines here depending on the mode that you're in right now. We've looked at companies in 3 principal modes going through 2020. Those companies that are in survival mode, where much of their market has had a forced close, or maybe they've had challenges around leadership and some internal structure as well. Or companies that are in adaptive mode. This is most of us, where we're all having to figure out new ways to work in an environment with very different circumstances. And then there are companies that are in growth mode, that circumstances have created a burst of growth, perhaps in an unexpected way. If you're in survival mode, this is about reconciling MarTech investments to eliminate some redundancy and emphasize customer experience as we suggested. If you're in adaptive mode, trying to figure out how to pivot and what to pivot, this is where you use technology to model out some possible outcomes. If you do this scenario, what happens? If you shift budget here, what happens? And flex some of your MarTech investments based on what's performing best. Now, if you're in growth mode, your challenge becomes one of using technology to align marketing with operations, or operations with everything about your go-to-market. The challenge for these companies is telling a story that they can't back up based on product availability or supply chain access. So closely tethering operational insight to marketing and customer communications is key.
Talking about technology, your local business and channel partners are at the mercy of your technology and vendor decisions. Understanding the functionality and vendor services they use, but more importantly, which ones they value, should be part of this whole consideration process. Then providing that single point of entry into your ecosystem so your partners can access the entire toolkit you're providing them will really reduce the friction and improve adoption of your programs. And the single point of entry can really provide a wealth of information to help inform your decisions. We can gather data on how partners are navigating your hub, or what links they're clicking on, what vendors are they engaging with, what assets are they using, what products they're purchasing. And all of this can provide the insights that you need to really make those informed technology and vendor decisions that we're talking about today.
This point is about a way of working. So we've given you customer obsession as your guiding umbrella. We've given you a few tactics around improving customer experience, auditing your technology, focusing on delivering customer value. This is about adopting a way of working that allows for much needed flexibility. And Forrester has called this people-led planning, the idea that you're making planning decisions not 12 months in advance, not based on the budget that you've always put into the same set of channels, but actually based on customer-led insights. And I'm just going to kind of walk you through what we found tends to work really well in terms of helping companies move from a static linear planning process into something that is deliberately more iterative, much faster, much more insights driven. So, thought number one is to emphasize work effort over an end reveal. I think for many marketers, marketing planning is about building the plan, getting to an end brief or an end plan. But in this case, the work itself should have value. And thinking in a more iterative way means that it isn't about getting to the end, but it's about wringing value out of every step along the way. We're also telling companies to act, don't just plan. This is a very agile development sort of thing where you think about how agile software and the agile development process isn't about building a product. It's actually about iterating on a product along the way. So don't just intend to get to a plan. Don't plan a meeting to make a decision in. Make the decision in the conversation you're having right now. Broaden who and what counts in the plan. I've talked to several agencies that are working with clients to help include the downstream analytics folks, the downstream legal and compliance folks, the upstream strategy folks, so that all of those people are involved from the beginning in thinking about what the plan should include. And no one gets surprised or gets something handed off to them 3 months into things before there's been a chance for them to say, there might be a challenge with this. And then the last point is to create reasons to frequently talk about marketing plans. This might be having a daily data drip that comes in every day about how your existing marketing is performing. Or maybe it's customer insights that you are circulating around to your team or your broader organization or that broader set of stakeholders. The more you are regularly talking about what should we be doing to create value for our customers today, the easier it is for those decisions to be made in an ongoing basis, not in a one and done type of approach.
Yeah, this is great information. And I really want to focus on those two last points: broaden who and what counts in the plan, and create reasons to talk frequently about marketing. You know, when you think about, who is involved in that conversation downstream, your local business partners should be invited to the table and have that discussion. They can be a really important part of your customer journey. And sometimes they are closer to your consumer than anyone in your marketing organization. So, while they are not always the best marketers or maybe even really understand marketing concepts, their insights into consumer behavior and even competitive product positioning, and in general, how your brand resonates in their local community should be helping to inform your marketing planning. And leveraged correctly, these conversations can really glean actionable data in your planning process. And then, while your business partners might not be marketing experts, they are driven to generate revenue. So providing data on how they in particular are doing executing on your programs can really generate that advocacy and drive adoption. And the best way to do this is by sharing data, and dashboards are a great way to do that. Providing dashboards on how assets are being used or what assets are successful, how marketing campaigns are performing, even ROI on your programs just reinforces the importance of marketing and the value it brings to their business. And those numbers can become an obsession that really keeps your marketing top of their mind.
So, this is my last point of the day. I hope that you come away from this conversation remembering to not stop marketing. And I want to call on some past studies that are not from Forrester. These are broader economic studies that have looked at decades of previous recessions. I'm just going to call, first of all, one done by McGraw-Hill that actually studied companies during the 1980 to 85 period, looking specifically at the recession between 81 and 82. They actually found that companies that continued to market and marketed aggressively during the recession had 256% higher sales than those that didn't continue to market. This is for a number of reasons, because if you are marketing when no one else is, you have a much louder voice. But also because marketing drives sales, and shutting things down changes and affects the demand pipeline. Now, I'm pragmatic enough to realize that I can't just say, don't stop marketing in a world where budgets have to be tightened, and there is definitely a change in the way that people are buying. So, my guidance is shuffle priorities if you must. This might mean that marketing investment isn't all about promotion. Going all the way back to those numbers that I shared at the beginning, we're finding that much less of the buy now kinds of activity is going on. And instead, marketers are investing in long term brand stories and in things like product innovation, placement innovation, and pricing strategies. So I'll give you just a few examples here of some quick stories about companies that are trying to pivot away from just pure promotional marketing and into things that are innovating around their product, their placement, and their price. So my first example here comes from Purple, the mattress company, innovating around product. Purple is actually now making seat cushions for all of us who are unexpectedly working from home on extremely uncomfortable chairs. So broadening out the product portfolio that it offers to be relevant for what a buyer needs today. Couple of other stories from you here. Peloton is doing something similar around product innovation. Peloton offers family-friendly programming today. So here we all are at home, many of us with children at home, going through school at home. Instead of skipping my Peloton workout altogether, now I have a chance to do something with my kids or have my kids do their PE program using Peloton programming. And then I think I have one more example. This is an example of just being responsive and flexing to be more people-led. This comes from a company called Rothy's, where they had put a promotion into the market that was based on some level of purchase. They would make donations to first responders. And they got feedback from their audience that actually they wanted to have them make that donation with no purchase threshold at all. So this idea of being responsive and investing in the brand relationship as opposed to just pitching product or pitching a promotion is something that Rothy's responded to. So I'm going to conclude my overall comments just with this point that customer obsession can give you the guidance you need to figure out how to create value for your customers. And marketing today should be investing in that. So Sarah, I think you have a few closing remarks to sort of bring this all home for everybody.
Yes, thanks. You know, just like Shar was saying, as we work with our corporate partners and the pandemic was starting to hit, we had the same messaging for our local business partners. And it was, please don't panic and please don't stop advertising. That's the worst thing that you could possibly be doing right now. So what we did is really took a consultative approach in both directions. We worked with our corporate stakeholders to develop and execute on modified funding programs, more relevant creative messaging, and the development of new assets. And then we really worked hard with those local business owners who have very limited budgets to review what their current media mix was, to help shift their spending into more relevant tactics, and then help them to deploy this new creative messaging. And what we saw were that the best scenario was when our corporate partners and our local business partners were really working together, and they were much more able to quickly pivot and respond to those consumer needs, which is where we really are trying to focus. You know, some of the things that you can do immediately to help respond to changing consumer behaviors and help those local partners adapt and react in meaningful ways are some of these areas. You know, one of the most important and immediate actions that you can take is to really help realign marketing spend to respond to this evolving consumer behaviors, and really help maintain that local presence. You know, and this may mean really re-educating partners on the importance of digital and shifting those funds into more targeted channels that make sense for their local specific situation. You know, Shar was mentioning earlier how, when we were all staying at home, cinemas closed, shopping malls closed, and out of home took a big hit. And we have a lot of local business partners that leverage out of home. So we were quickly helping them to adapt and react and shift those funds. Along with radio and local TV are big places where our local partners spend their budgets. Streaming services are really taking that over. So helping them understand how they can pivot into these channels has been really important. And then on the flip side, we've seen social and Facebook skyrocket. And so how do we help educate those local partners and provide the assets needed so that they can kind of capitalize on these new behaviors has become really important for us, because we really want to help them spend those marketing dollars in really effective, efficient ways and not go dark during this time. We're running out of time, so just quickly, the other place where we saw a lot of disruption was in events. And events are really important to our local business partners because it's a way for them to connect with the community. And we offer a set of services that help with events. And instead of helping book events, we were managing cancellations and postponements and refunds. But more importantly for us, it was about finding other ways to help these local business partners continue to engage in the community and tactics in ways we would have never previously thought about. So we're testing new tactics and partnerships to really enable that community engagement and provide that flexibility no matter, what the current situation is. And I think it's all about being able to pivot, being very creative right now, in ways that we continue to improve the consumer journey and really focus on what our consumers need and where they are. Shar, I'm going to throw it back to you to wrap it up and summarize what we've talked about today.
So just a quick summary to kind of remind you of the points we made. It is true that the current pandemic is stunning marketing, but this is an opportunity for you to reinvent the things that you already knew needed to change about your marketing function. I think you can drive customer obsession at your firm with some new habits around customer understanding, brand strategy, and brand experience. Fix broken customer experiences to improve retention of your current customers. Create value beyond the economic value that you might be doing today. Audit your technology and services to find efficiencies. Replace your legacy process with something that's more flexible, more iterative, and more people-led. And then, of course, don't stop marketing. I think we have a few minutes for some questions. So thank you all very much for your time and attention. We would love to take some questions.
Yeah, Shar, we do have one question here. The first question is, you talked a lot about improving the customer experience. What's the first thing I should be doing? Shar, what would you suggest? Where should they start?
I'm actually going to give you two. I'm going to give you a tactical thing, and then I'm going to give you a strategy thing. So the tactical thing is, I would look for things that are broken. Super tactical. Go through the journeys that are typical of your customers. Where are they using certain channels? How are they interacting with your company, your brand, your local businesses, and fix the things that are breaking. So that's a very tactical one. The more strategic one is to think about the right manifestation of customer obsession for you. So, not every company is going to end up being customer obsessed in the same way. A utility company might manifest customer obsession as reliability. We are always on. You never have to worry about us. A hospitality company might manifest customer obsession through service. We are just exceptionally luxurious in the service that we provide. A financial institution might manifest through advocacy. We are going to represent you and give you guidance and be on your side as you tackle the forces of the world. So think a little bit about what the right manifestation is for you, and that will give you a thing to walk toward, a way to determine what strategies you need to invest in.
Yeah, and I would just add to that tactical piece in that what's broken, make sure you go through the entire consumer journey and really look at each distribution point. And are there ways that you can help enable those channel partners to execute in what might be a broken place in their journey? So again, providing assets, providing point of sale, providing signage, those are all pretty easy things to fix, but you have to identify them first and then provide the support materials to help them improve that overall experience. So that's would be the one thing that I would add to what you've said so far, Shar.
Great.
I think we have time for one more question. So what came in is, what impact is the pandemic having on advertising? Shar, I know you guys at Forrester are doing a lot of research and predictions around this. Do you want to share some of the Forrester insights that you have?
Yeah, so I think the biggest shift around advertising is this movement toward a more heavy digital share of the overall advertising pie. And let's be honest, that was happening anyway. It was already happening that digital was taking a larger and larger portion of marketers' budgets. What's happening now is that even coming out of this recession, we're never going to go back to a time when offline advertising was the largest investment. We're expecting that digital will be the largest investment, but also that anything in a traditional media context will have digital components that you might have out of home that has digital components to enable some of the flexibility that we've been talking about here today.
Yeah, and I would just add, we're talking to all of our clients right now. Obviously, shifting to digital has been a huge change for them, and one that we're helping enable through assets and media placement. But it was funny, we talked to some of our clients last week, and they said digital transformation is real. We're not just talking about it anymore. It is for real. It has to happen. We have to pivot or die. And it's really, I would say that is probably the biggest thing that we're seeing right now across the board, from corporate down to local, is this shift to digital, because we can so quickly pivot and react in ways and be more engaged with our consumers. So I definitely agree, that's what we're seeing, and I think you are right that this has become the new norm. We're out of time today. Shar, it has been so great presenting with you. Thank you so much for presenting with us today and sharing your insights from Forrester. Thank you to all of our participants for hanging in there for an hour, giving us an hour of your time. We know you guys are so busy right now. If you have any questions around any of the materials that we've talked about today, we both Forrester and BrandMuscle offer tons of materials on their websites and resources for you to help manage the chaos that is the time that we are in today. Again, thank you, Shar, for your time. Thank you to everyone on the phone. Have a great day today.
Thank you, Sarah.